Hi, it's Jonathan Cotten with the Good Feet Store, and welcome to Footnotes. We are very pleased to welcome to Footnotes NFL legend and Super Bowl 22 not only champion but MVP Doug Williams. Doug, it is great to have you here.
No, I'm glad to be here. I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is exciting for sure.
Right.
This can be just a conversation. We're just going to just talk about different things, and so. But I want to start first and take you back to that night. January 31st, 1988,
Wow.
in San Diego. When you stood and as you walked off the field after winning that game, was that something that you really never could imagine taking place, or did you actually envision that sometime as a child playing football?
I'm not going to say I envision that as a youngster, but I tell you what, when you get into the league, I think everybody wants to have that time that you can walk off the field as a Super Bowl winner. And that night, it took that long, and the way I got there, walking off the field was so much gratitude, man, and I had so much on my mind and going through my mind and thinking about all the people who helped me get there. You just got so much you don't even know what's going on because you just knew at that particular time you just won the Super Bowl. The greatest game in NFL, you won it. And walk it off, man, I tell you, I was thinking about Coach Robinson, I was thinking about my parents, my oldest brother, my youngest brother, and all the cousins and stuff around that had cheered and pulled for me and prayed for me. So, there's so much on my mind, and just walking off, did nothing else matter.
And I think that's the thing. That's the reason that we're here. Is we love the fact that you were a Super Bowl champion and everything. But your story, when I really kind of got the full breadth and scope of your story, I said, I want that story to be told more than just on the NFL Network or wherever else. I think that it's something that whether you're a football fan or not, people should know, because I think there's so many life lessons,
right?
So many takeaways that people, regardless of where you are in life, for me, our life experience is very different, okay? But I resonate with a lot of the things that just your way of dealing with things, and to me it was very inspiring. So let's go back to that little place called Zachary, Louisiana, and talk a little bit about what it was like, pre-high school, growing up in Zachary, Louisiana. You weren't necessarily on the ninth hole of the country club of where you were living, right?
No, when you think about Zachary and you say anything about Zachary, I light up because to me, it was special to me because that's where I grew up. And I was fortunate enough, my family, it was 8 of us. We grew up together. I had 2 little brothers. But they not little brothers today, but they was little brothers back then. And, we was like real close to each other. We got up every morning early. We went outside, and I don't know if you know this tree, they call it cuckabug tree. And we used to throw those, and we used to have a little broomstick, and we hitting them, taking turns batting and things like that. I remember all that. I remember growing up, and my mom, my dad, you didn't see them in the morning because they had to go to work. It was just us in the house getting ready to go to school every morning. And all the older people that lived in the neighborhood would watch over us, And if we did something wrong, if we started fighting or what have you. So when my mom came home, she knew everything because Mr. Will to my right, Miss Matt to my left, Miss Mary to the front, they was going to tell her that we was fighting, So, and we had to pay a price. And
you had the neighborhood watch program going on before there was such a thing, right?
Let me tell you something, we didn't need the police. We had the police. But it was great because, you ever heard the cliche about it take a village to raise kids?
Yeah.
We lived in the village,
right.
and that was a good thing.
Right.
And it was like I tell everybody, I didn't know that I was poor until I was 22 because everybody around me was living the same way.
Same way, right?
Yeah, so
right.
That never bothered me.
So poor means different things to different people.
Right.
For Doug Williams growing up in Zachary, Louisiana, what did that look like?
Well, when you say poor to me, when I was growing up, we ate every day. We had clothes on our back every day. We wasn't somebody who didn't have what they had today. When people talk about poor today, it's a little different than when we grew up. because my mom and my dad and surrounding, because they had gardens, they grew a lot of stuff. We was gonna find a way to eat. That was number one. But at the end of the day, when you get out there in real life, then you realize that you didn't have what the people out there had.
Right.
But it didn't matter to us because we had us.
Yeah.
As a group.
Right.
They say you got a house full of love. That's all you need, and that's
Right.
what we had growing up.
And you had a house full of love, but you didn't have running water.
Ooh.
For a good part of growing up.
I was 14 years old.
Wow.
Just imagine now. It's 8 of us, and I was 14. I got 2 younger brothers, but everybody else was older than me. So they grew up without running water either. We had a well in the backyard, and you had to go out there and you had to draw that water and bring it in. Go get me a pail of water. You go out and it was thought that's the way of life. That was the way of life. We did that, and the first time we got our bathroom and they said it was working. It was amazing to go to the bathroom and stand over the commode, and you can do whatever you got to do in the commode, and you can flush it. I mean, it's funny now, but at that time it was real.
The things we take for granted.
Yeah, it was real.
Huge,
and even today, when I tell my kids that day, they look at me and say, "Dad, don't be talking about nothing like that." And I let them know it's real.
Right.
Our outhouse, was probably about 40 yards from the house. And, I tell them about a slop jar. They don't know what a slop jar is. And I hate to tell people what it is. A slop jar was one of those white pails that you can do whatever you want in it, and you had to take it to the outhouse to dump it.
Right.
So we had to do all that. And now when I think about that, Johnny, to be honest with you, it brings a smile to my face, and it brings a sad face, because it know that I come from that where I am today. But at the same time, it's where I don't want to go back.
Right.
And I want to make sure my kids don't have to go back and live like that.
Right. Now some people credit, always said that when you got to the NFL, you were always known for that strong right arm. And you said that strong right arm got its work in that old slot bucket.
They want to know how my arm got strong, and I think I explained it to them. I tell them, I was the designated slop jar taker, so I had to carry it out every morning. And you got to go to school, and that stuff can't flash back on you, because if it get on your clothes, you ain't gonna smell that good in school. So what I did, I had it out. I had my arm out like this, straight. And I was carrying that bucket just straight on, and I guess my shoulder and all that built up through the years of taking it out there. And that's what I told him, man. That was one of the reasons why my arm was strong.
There we go. That's part of the Doug Williams legend right there. There we go. Oh, that's great. So you started, originally football wasn't your sport of choice, right?
No, not at all. I hate to say this, but I didn't want to get hit. I didn't want to play football. I was baseball and basketball. Had a guy at LSU back at that time called Pistol Pete Mariners.
Oh, yeah.
Pistol Pete. I wanted to be Pistol Pete. I thought I was a basketball player. I thought I was a heck of a pitcher in baseball. And I thought if I had a chance to play professionally, it would have been baseball. But in 8th grade, my brother was coaching at my high school. And he told me that they was going to start a football program for the 8th graders. I said, that's fine. She said, but you're going to play quarterback. I said, I'm not going to even play football. He said, well, you got 2 choices. He said, you're going to either play or you're going to whip me. So I ended up playing football.
Yeah. Well, you took the route you felt like was maybe the easiest on you.
It was the easiest. If you know my brother, it was the easiest route.
So playing high school, was this a diverse team, or was it all black, or were you one of the few? What was it like in high school?
They integrated in my town, East Baton Rouge Parish, in 1970, and which means we had 2 schools within 3 miles of each other. Pride High School was the predominantly white school, and we had Cheneyville High School was the predominantly black school. So I went to Cheneyville, and that was a little town past Pride High School called Baywood, which was predominantly black. They all used to go to Cheneyville. But the rule was you could not pass up a school to get to another school. So all those guys, which was some pretty good players that was on our football team, was out there. They ended up going to Pride. And the same thing with Pride, if you couldn't pass up Cheneyville. So the white kids that was going to Pride couldn't pass up Cheneyville. So what they did, Central Private School. and Stillman became prominent. So it was two private schools within the area that came up, and most of the white kids went to the private school who had to go to Cheneyville.
Right.
But if you were still going to Pride, you went on to Pride. So with that happening, I only played football with two white guys in my high school ever. One of them was Dale Lassian, who's a state trooper now. He probably retired. Dale Lassian, and the other one was Dara Day. You know, both of them was offensive linemen. They played. That's the first time I ever played with white boys on the team. You know, and they was good. They mixed in well. We had no problem because, you know, we couldn't control the integration part.
Right.
So we had to go to school. But we ended up playing Pride in the Jamboree, Pride High School in Cheneyville, and just so happened, all the guys that used to play with me was real good football players. The Promise boy, you had Otis, you had Kevin Promise. I mean, they could play. And Jamboree was one of those games where the last team who had the football was going to win. And just so happened we had it last, so we ended up winning the Jamboree, the only time we ever played against each other. But that's what happened back then.
Yeah, yeah. So as a young person growing up in Zachary, you had to confront very overt issues of racism, and I think you told the story of what happened on the intersection of Lemon and Plank and the other intersection town. So talk about that some.
Well, you know, the good thing about that, we never had to confront them. But what happened was, where we lived on Plank Road was about a half a mile from Lemon Road and a half a mile from Pride Port Hudson Road, which was two intersections. And every Friday night, nobody knew what time it was going to happen. All they knew it was going to happen. We had crosses burned at both crossroads, you know, and within that mile range of those two crossroads, where everybody who lived in there was black. So, you know, it was packed in there. And you know, we looked at it back then was more of a scare tactic more than anything. And all the men in the area would get together, man, and get in their cars or trucks or whatever to try to get down there to find out who's burning the cross. They took their guns with them and stuff like that. But, you know, it was one of those situations where the cross was burned and they was gone. You know, but that happened just about every Friday night.
Wow.
And you know, that's the thing you had to deal with. But your parents always told you, you know, be careful. You know, when night came, there wasn't no street lights or anything like that. They always say, we don't want you on that road at night, you know, because anything can happen. And you know, it's like LSU and Ole Miss, when they had a football game, Plank Road went all the way into Mississippi. And you could stand out there in the middle of the day, and you could see all the rebel flags coming out of Mississippi going into Baton Rouge. And that's what my parents didn't want us to be a part of, because, you know, what the rebel flag stood for at that time, and maybe even today kind of, you know, you didn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. How does experiencing that, what do you credit that for not creating within you hatred or mistrust for white people, or, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, you know, how do you resolve that to where it doesn't consume you?
You know, we was fortunate. You know, my parents, they kind of told us what was happening, but at the same time, growing up, you understood what was happening, so you never got a chance to mix in it, because they told you to stay away from it. And so we stayed within our own selves, and we grew up. I mean, we was happy. We had a great time. So, you know, you only get older and you realize that it's out there. But at the same time, my dad used to always tell us that if they don't want you around, don't be around. Go where you want it. And we've always done that. We've stayed away from things. We didn't go somewhere if somebody didn't like us or didn't want us to be there. We didn't go there to try to prove that we're supposed to be here too. You know, as I always say, go away from it. That way you don't have no problems. So we never grew up with any problems. I mean, even like another guy, Sherman Floyd, myself, my brother became baseball coach out at Central High School, which was predominant white. And he wanted us to play in the American League Baseball League with him. So when we played, we was the only two black guys in the American Legion in Baton Rouge. We integrated American Legion baseball. And Denham Springs, be honest with you, Denham Springs is the hometown of David Duke.
Wow.
Yeah, 35 miles from where I live.
Wow.
And we used to go out in Denham Springs and play. And the first time we played out in Denham Springs, the stadium was packed. And, I was coming home one time and somebody in the stand say, hey, slap that N-word side the head, just like that. I mean, it was crazy. And the next time I got off the bat, they say, he can't play, throw at that end. And my big brother said, hey, Doug, show him what you can do. And the boy threw the ball up, and I hit one off the wall, but never really worried about what they were saying.
Yeah.
And my daddy,
focus on what you can do.
My daddy came to the game, and I rode to the game with my brother. And my dad came to the game because he knew we was in Denham Springs. Mm-hmm. And, he always carried it. He had a German Luger pistol with him. So when we was on our way home, we had a truck full of young guys pull up behind me, my brother. I'm talking about almost on the bumper. And before you know it, my daddy pulled up behind them, and they realized that, looked back and saw him, they ran off the road, It was one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
But other than that, I say other than that, but, we just dealt with it the way it was.
Right.
Always say, hey, if they call you something, just show them what you can do.
Yeah.
And that's how I deal with it.
That's amazing. I love that attitude. And I think, again, like we said at the first, that's what wanted me to have you here and for us to just to talk about some of these things. And I think to help us all understand how to deal, because we're all going to be challenged in life in different ways. We're going to have, and I really like to have the view that we're all in this together, and we can learn from each other. And as shocking, really, to me, and as we talk about more of your life experience, it's amazing to even think back on that. I mean, I was, a few years younger than you, but still, even as I remember following you in your career and that kind of thing, not even realizing at that time that you were dealing with things right then that I'm thinking were already history. That was like from a different time. So you go to Grambling, you fall under the tutelage of a legendary coach Eddie Robinson, and we were talking before we started here. How many years did he coach there at Grambling?
Oh man, 57 years. He
57
started when he was 21, and that was in 1941.
Yeah.
His last year was 1997.
That's amazing.
57 years.
That's amazing.
And playing for Coach Robinson, and after you don't realize it until you leave. Mm-hmm. When you look back on his career and what he had to go through.
Mm-hmm. Right, sure.
We talk about what we had to go through. What did he have to go through?
Right.
But not one day of playing for Eddie Robinson that he ever told us that we couldn't do anything because we was black. Yeah. His thing was, don't ever use the fact that you didn't make it or you can't do this because you're black. Mm-hmm. And so, that 4 years with Eddie Robinson taught us that, you can do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it. Mm-hmm. And that's how we looked at it. And then when you get out and you realize, you know what, Coach probably went through so much stuff. We think we went through something. You can't imagine what he probably went through to get where he was at that particular time.
40s, 50s, 60s, all through those times.
Just think, 41.
Yeah.
The civil rights didn't come into existence until 1965.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what he had to go through to try to get us prepared for America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you go to Grambling, and Coach Robinson is kind of a running. He has a running offense. He's not a pass. Doesn't really have a passing offense, right? And then Doug Williams shows up. So what is that like?
Well, it's amazing because James Harris, who played quarterback there too, way before me, he always tell me, he said, man, you must have been a bad dude. I said, why you say that? He said, because you threw for 3,200 yards in Eddie Robinson offense. Now, we had a wing T, and if you know what a wing T is, that's definitely a running offense. Mm-hmm. And
that's the two tight ends of the flanker.
Yeah, two tight end and a wing back.
Yeah.
And, and my senior year, I led the whole nation in passing. As a matter of fact, when I graduated, in 1978, this is crazy. When you look at the numbers today of all these guys that played after me, I was the all-time leading passer in NC2A history in 1978.
Wow.
Had 8,400 yards.
Yeah.
And now you got guys that got 13, 14, 15,000 yards with 160 and 40 TDs. It was truly amazing when you think about what I accomplished in Eddie Robinson offense compared to today.
Today, yeah.
People don't look at it, but I realize it, and other folks realize who played understood what it was all about.
Yeah. In the game against Temple was your last collegiate game, right?
We played in Tokyo, Japan, December the 11th, 1977.
It's anchored in your mind, isn't it?
I know exactly when it was. The thing about it, we had played Temple the year before. They beat us on the last second pass, 31-30. They beat us in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this was kind of like a revenge game, but we couldn't go out there with revenge on our mind. We had to play the game.
Right.
And they was leading us 32-28 with 3 minutes and 15 seconds left in the game. And they kicked off to us, and we had the ball on the 15-yard line. So we drove down all the way down, and we was on the 10-yard line, and we called timeout. And Coach Robinson asked me, he said, well, what you want to throw, Cap? I said, Coach, we're not going to throw the ball. He said, hell, what you mean we're not going to throw? I said, we're not going to throw. I said, they know we're going to throw. He said, well, what you want? I said, we're going to run the swing. We're going to run the sweep. He said, you want the tailback? You want Odell? Odell was starting tailback. He was on the sideline at the time. I said, no, keep him on the sideline. I said, because if you put him in, they're going to know we're going to run it. So we kept him on the sideline and went in, and we ran 37 swing, handed to Floyd Womack. I can remember the running back name. He went in untouched because they dropped 9 guys in the end zone, in a zone, hoping for a pass. 9 guys. And he looked at me, he said, Cat, you know what you're doing, don't you? And after the game in the locker room, he said, hell, I don't care what anybody say. We have the Heisman Trophy winner in here.
Right.
And he said that because the Heisman Trophy was given the Saturday before we played in Tokyo. And I finished 4th in the Heisman, but wasn't invited to the dinner.
Didn't get to go.
Didn't invite him, which was fine, but he said that, and to me, that was probably one of the most meaningful things that a coach can say to you.
Yeah, and maybe the fact that Earl Campbell won it as the premier running back and everything, it was kind of like a reflection of the times too.
We understood going to Grambling, Texas,
right.
all other big schools.
Yeah.
The chances were slim and
Uphill
none under those situations. Yeah.
Of course, if you'd had good feet arch supports back then, maybe you'd have run a little bit more. Who knows?
Well, if I had good feet, ain't no telling what I wouldn't have done back then. Where were you, Jonathan? When we needed you.
Hadn't quite got there yet. Yeah. But we'll get back to that because we were glad to be able to get you fitted with the 3-step system, and you liked it, didn't you? Yeah.
I'm glad you did too. Especially now in my retirement age, you get up and your feet is aching and you flat-footed as it is, and you don't know that until you go to the Good Feet store and they say, look, let's show you where you are. And they put me on that sheet of paper and I'm saying, wow, my feet is that flat? And I'm just glad I got the 3-step system, man, because the last few months, my wife will tell you that I don't miss a day without putting them on because they've done wonders by me.
There you go. Right. We don't want you to go a day without them for sure. Most people don't realize you have 4 arches in the feet, and we want to support all 4 of them for sure.
Believe me, they are supported. Especially now, I'm of age right now. You got to take care of your feet.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I got a chance to meet you and go in and get fitted. And now every day I realize that you need your support. So I do that.
Absolutely. We need to, we'll encourage everybody, including those people that are still playing out there to young people and everybody to get arch supports for sure.
See, I don't think, I know I never realized it, and I don't think a lot of other people realize how important your arch is to you.
Yeah.
I think if they do it at an early age and while they're in sports and everything else, it'll benefit them a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more than they think it would.
Right. But when you're in high school and college, you think you're invincible.
Invincible. Yeah. All of them think they're invincible. But you know what? They'll give out on you in time. You never know.
It's a matter of time. That's right. So you're in Grambling, and you're the 4th in the Heisman voting, right?
Right.
You've accomplished all these things, and the NFL is just sending all their representatives to Grambling, right? All 28 teams are sending people there to scout you.
Yeah,
is that the way it was?
No, Grambling. Yeah, Grambling always had a lot of scouts
Yeah.
because back from '73 on back, Grambling had great players.
Yeah.
They recruited a lot of good guys.
Right.
So scouts would always come to Grambling.
Okay.
And in my senior year, they came just like every day. You had scouts there.
So you did have a lot. Okay.
Every day.
Okay.
But it was only one coach who came.
The only one coach. Okay.
Only one coach.
And who was that?
Joe Gibbs.
Okay.
Joe Gibbs came. I was doing student teaching at Carroll High School in Monroe, Louisiana. It's about 30 miles from Grambling. And and then all of a sudden the principal came in. He walked in with Coach Gibbs. He said, "Somebody here to see you." And he told me who he was. He said, don't mind me. I'm gonna sit back here." So for 2 days, he sat in the back of the room while I was teaching physical education class. We was in health education at that time. So he sat back there for 2 days, and after each day, we would go get lunch at the McDonald's, got a little lunch, and we'll come back and we'll get on the board, and he would ask me about my offense, about what we ran, not about his because I didn't know his, but he wanted to know exactly how we ran, and it was showing him that I knew what was going on the football field.
Right.
So we talked about that. Then we talked about real life. And he went back to Tampa. He was at Tampa that time. He went back to Tampa and told Coach John McKay that if we want a quarterback, we need to draft a kid from Grambling. And the rest is history. He told him, and that's what happened.
And the assessment was not just that you had this strong right arm and could throw a bullet, which you could, and that you had mobility, which you did. Right. It wasn't all those things, but it was also that you had the mental acuity to understand the game and to really act as that field general. And that was huge because at the time the perception was
wasn't smart enough.
Yeah.
But like I say, he wanted to know about our offense. He wanted to know, did I understand what we was doing?
Right.
And I think for those 2 days he realized that, hey, this guy understands football. He understands why they do certain things and things like that, because running the wing tee, Coach Robinson had a rhythm to it.
Right.
We ran so many things off the wing tee. Like a good example, we ran 28 pass. We ran 25 counter. We ran 22. We ran 28 screen. We ran 28 pass. We did all that off of one play. So you almost had to understand the offense in order to get it done. And when we went through that on the board and stuff, he realized then that this guy's pretty good, and from not only from a player standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint too.
Right.
And another part is, we talked about family. He knew where I come from and my family and things like that. So he had everything he needed to go back to Coach McKay and let him know this is our guy.
Yeah, he had roots.
Right.
In other words, yeah. And so you go into the NFL and you're coming into Tampa Bay, which Tampa Bay then wasn't the Tampa Bay of today, in a lot of ways as far as the city and the team and everything. So what was that like, that adjustment, coming in in the professional ranks?
Well, coming from Grambling, you just happy to be there, number one.
Mm-hmm.
You knew you were going to get paid, but, it wasn't about the money. It's about the opportunity to play professional football.
Right.
But you realize that it is a business.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came out there, I didn't sign for a whole week. I had to set out a whole week because the owner at that particular time did not want to pay what they was paying first-round picks. So I told my agent, who was Jimmy Walsh, who was Joe Namath's agent, I said, look, let's just go out and let's sign this contract because, sooner or later I get paid. He said, okay. So I signed. I was a week going into camp. And what Joe Gibbs did for a whole training camp after I got there, after every tour day, we did tour days, not like they do today. We did tour days. So after every tour days, when he get through with meeting, I went home with Joe Gibbs every day, sat at his dinner table, ate dinner with him, Pat, his wife, JD, bless his soul, and Coy, every night. And when we got through eating, they got up from the table and we stayed there and we went over the playbook. And he would, when we finished getting his car, he'd bring me back to the hotel every night, So when you talk about Joe Gibbs, he's not just a football coach.
Right.
He's a human being.
He's a real deal.
Real deal.
Yeah.
Spiritual guy too, man.
Yeah.
You can't get nobody more spirited than Joe Gibbs. So I'm gonna always be grateful for what he did during that time.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and I ended up playing. Started first game. Started for 5 years. Got my jaw broke my rookie year. Missed 7 games. Came back and played the last football game with a broken jaw. You know, it's just one of those things. You want to show who you are.
But somehow, from the guy that didn't want to play football because you didn't want to be hit, to playing with a broken jaw, the transformation takes place there.
Where I've been playing, went on played through high school and college, you have a different mindset.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy the game. I like the game. I like being on the field with your teammates and stuff like that. And, you know, when I got hurt and missing that time, you feel bad
You
because
don't want to let them down.
you don't want to let them down,
Yeah.
but it's out of your control. So
Right.
when I had a chance to play that last game, you know, even though I had lost 20 pounds, I had a chance to go out there and play the last game to get ready for the next season, and I did that.
Yeah. And then you end up leading Tampa Bay, which, as an expansion franchise, they had some pretty woeful first years, but you end up leading them into the playoffs. And so speak to that some, what that was like.
Yeah, the first year, you know, they had won in 2 years in existence. They had won 2 games in 2 years. So when I got there, we ended up winning 5 games my rookie year, and we came back the next year and we won the division. Second year, we won the division, played in the championship game, and we had played the Rams early in the year. We beat the Rams like 24-7 early in the year.
Right.
And we played them the second time, but the problem was, and we still think, I talked to my tight end at that time, Jimmy Giles, we talk about it to this day, that we felt like the game plan was the same game plan that we had when we beat them. We didn't change game plan. And,
Right.
you know, in professional ranks, you got to do something different every now and then. So we did the same thing, and I got hurt early in the third quarter. I tore my bicep muscles, so I had to set it out the rest of the day, and we got beat 9-0 to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That was the thing, 9-0.
And that was, what year was that?
1979.
That was 79. Okay,
Right.
yeah. And so then you came back and you kept on with Tampa Bay, and there was one game that kind of jumped out at me, and that was a game that you played against Chicago in
82.
Well, I think it was actually January of '83, I believe.
Yeah, might. It's a playoff game.
It was a playoff game. Yeah, and you got tackled. And you fumbled the ball. Now, you know, I'm bringing up a fumble, but Steve McMichael picked up the fumble, and you're laying on your back, and Steve McMichael picked up the fumble, and take it from there.
Well, you know what, John? I did fumble.
Yeah.
I was trying to pass, and all of a sudden, guy was tackling me and hit my arm. The ball came loose. Steve McMichael picked it up, and I'm laying on my back. I rolled over, got up, and he was probably 10, 12, 15 yards in front of me. And I had a bad hamstring at that particular time. But at that particular time, I didn't even think about hamstring.
You had your leg wrapped because of the hamstring.
Yeah,
right?
I got up and got on the chase, man, and I ran him down. I had one guy that was Steve Revis, had a chance, and he missed him. And I got up and I ran him down. I tackled him around the 10-yard line. And we held him to a field goal.
Right.
Because if he had scored that touchdown, that'd have been 4 more points. They would have beat us.
Been all she wrote.
Yeah, so we came back and we won the game to go to the playoffs.
So the moral of that story is, when you're on the back, get up, right?
The moral of the story is what Coach Rob used to always tell us: get off the turf.
Yeah.
I got up off the turf, and thank God I ended up making the tackle, saving the game.
Yeah. Get off the turf. As Doug Williams just said, when you get knocked down, it's time to get up off the turf. And I think that's what impressed me about you, Doug, is you wanted to come into the Good Feet store. You weren't, as a former athlete, you weren't content to just be sitting on the couch. And that's what I would encourage anybody else is, don't surrender. You don't have to surrender to pain. You don't have to surrender to you're at X point in time in your life and it's time to kind of put it in neutral. No, at the Good Feet store, we believe in living an active and healthy lifestyle. We talk about, live the life you love. Don't let your feet get in the way. And we can come in and set you up with a free fitting and test walk. Go to goodfeet.com and make an appointment. Come on in, or if you're just in the area and where any of our stores are, just come on in. And you'll be amazed at just being able to work with somebody who's knowledgeable about your feet because it all starts there, and then it's going to extend all the way up the body. And I'm going to tell you, folks like Doug Williams and other athletes who have spent all their life trying to stay in peak condition can tell you about that. They can tell you about when something goes wrong with the feet, it affects a whole lot more than the feet. And we don't want you to feel that way. So come into Good Feet for your free fitting and test walk. And again, go to goodfeet.com for the location nearest you. You can make an appointment there, or you can just stop by whenever it is convenient. If you don't mind, just give a little summation of your life philosophy of dealing with adversity and kind of what you feel like the ingredients were that helped you be able to move past some of those things that for a lot of other people would have destroyed them.
Well, like I said earlier in the other segment, was the fact that I was fortunate enough to have two parents who had to get up every morning before daylight or whatever to go to work. And they instilled in us that if you start something, you got to finish it. At the same time, don't let anything distract you, no matter what it is. And they taught us that if somebody didn't want you to around, don't be around. And it taught you to persevere. No matter what happened, you had to get it done. Because, we had to do a lot of things at a young age growing up. Whether or not it was working in the garden behind with my daddy, picking up sweet potatoes or peanuts or what have you. And, as for a young person, especially today, that's something they're not going to do.
Yeah.
But that was something that I didn't have to do, but we did it because that's what we thought we should do as a family.
You're part of the family,
yeah,
right?
As a family, we talk about eating and things like that. You learn that it's certain things you got to do. And today, when I look back on it, I'm glad I was able to do all that because I think it shaped me to the person I am today. Because at the same time, you see a lot of young folks out there wouldn't have even thought about doing some of the things that we did back then, and especially without running water and everything. I don't know whether they could have made it.
Yeah.
But it made you understand that what you don't have, you don't need.
Yeah.
And you still can make it.
Sure.
And that's what happened with us. And it goes all the way back to Coach Eddie Robinson. When we was at Grambling, he used to always tell us that we did so much without anything, we can almost do anything without nothing.
I love that. I love that.
So,
Yeah.
You just learn to be able to do things with some of the things you don't have to do it with.
Yeah.
And you find a way to get it done.
Yeah, yeah. So by many respects, you were raised poor, right? You didn't have a lot of the things that people would say today, but in many ways you were rich.
Like I said, I was 22 years old before I realized I was poor. But when you look at it realistically, we really wasn't poor,
right?
But we was poor.
Yeah.
Because we never had to worry about eating.
Right.
Never had to worry about clothes on your back. We might not have as much as some of these guys and ladies have today that we didn't have it back then. But we found a way to get it done.
Right.
And plus we had all of us. We had love. We had everything you needed. You had two loving parents. So at the end of the day, we was a lot richer than a lot of people thought we were. But at the same time, we was poor.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe a lot of answers for society today, if we look back at the lessons that Doug Williams has shared with us here today. So we talked about your career and going into the NFL in the first few years there with Tampa Bay. You took a franchise that hadn't had much success. They'd only had 2 wins in their 2 years prior to you coming on. And in your first year, you got 5 wins, and then you took them to the playoffs and the NFC Championship, almost to the Super Bowl. And then 1983, you decide that, hey, it's time to sit down. Well, it was time to sit down and talk about the contract. And for you, you're thinking that you can work something out because, you're ready to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer for life, right?
I thought at the end of the day, I was going to be in Tampa the rest of my life. I thought maybe I'd end up running for mayor of Tampa or something like that. You never know if you stay there long enough. But things didn't work out that way. I was a free agent per se. Back then, pre-93, there wasn't no such thing as free agents. Mm-hmm. I was a free agent, but if somebody gave me a contract back then, they would have had to give Tampa Bay 2 first-round draft picks.
Wow.
So it really wasn't free agent.
Right.
So nobody would sign me. And so 1983 was a year that I did not play any football whatsoever, nowhere. And I went back to Zachary, Louisiana, and ended up doing substitute teaching at my brother's middle school. He was a middle school principal, so I went there every day, and I was a substitute teacher there every day. And to the Bill Tatum out of not San Francisco, but anyway, San Jose,
right.
California, came in and he said, you want to play for our team? I said, your team? Who's your team? He said, the Oklahoma Outlaws. And we sat down and talked, we talked about family, we talked about everything, and he wanted to make me part of his family per se.
Right.
And that was a whole different perspective coming from NFL team and the owners of Tampa. They didn't talk like that.
Right. Well, they not only did I not talk like that, but you were making $120,000 a year as not only a starting quarterback, but as a quarterback who was a leader and had taken the team to the playoffs and to the NFC Championship. And I think you asked for 600, and they made a counter offer. But you were being paid. You were number 54 on the list, right? Out of 28 teams.
54. When you think about it, it was only 28 teams in the whole league.
In the whole league, right?
And I was the 54th highest paid quarterback in the league,
right.
Which means that was an awful lot of backups making more than me.
Way ahead of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we asked to try to make it. We asked for 600. I came back to Tampa one day. Coach McKay called me and told me to come back and sit down with a guy named Phil Kruger, who was negotiating for the owner. And I came back and went to Phil's office and sat down, and he told me that the offer they had made early was they had rescinded that one. So he offered me $375, not $400. I said, $375? He said, yeah. He said, but we're going to build some incentives in there. I said, what kind of incentives, Phil? He said, well, if you finish 10th in the pass. And I said, hold up, Phil. I said, I don't want any of your if money. I said, I've been down here for 5 years. I got beat up. I did everything. I said, I don't want no if money. And I got up and I left and went on to New Orleans because at that time my dad was in the hospital and I had just lost my wife.
Right.
Janice had passed away.
Right, from an aneurysm.
Yeah, so, football wasn't that important to me. I had a baby girl who was 3 months old.
Right.
So, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to coach the high school football and take care of my baby girl.
Right.
And that's fine. And that's when the Tatums came in and talked about playing for the Oklahoma Outlaws.
Right. And just to replay the tape on that, because that's an amazing story of overcome adversity. So your wife, Janice, you're out shopping and she has a headache, right?
Yeah, she woke up and told me she had a headache. And I said, what? She said, I got a headache. So we rushed her to the hospital.
Yeah.
And when we got there and they did all this CAT scans and everything, they told her it was an aneurysm. And they said, we got to operate. I said, okay. They operated and she lived for a week, And the good thing about her, bless her soul, was she told my mom at that particular time, bless my mom's soul too, that take care of my baby. She said that. She said, take care of Miss Ashley. And that's the last thing she told my mom. And my mom did exactly that her whole life,
Wow.
But it was one of those things where you question God, because I wanted to know why.
Sure.
But, it didn't take long for me to understand that, you don't question him because, number one, I never will forget Mike Spink's wife passed away during the same time. Mm-hmm. And I had a cousin, Janice, who lived down the street from me in Zachary. Her dad and her mom passed away in the same week. And then I realized, I said, you know what? I'm asking why, but I'm looking at people that I see on TV, people that are close to me, that, they losing people like this. And I realized then, you don't ask why. You just got to find a way to get over it.
Right.
And, it was tough, but at the same time, you have to understand that, you don't question him and you don't control it.
Right. And you have to deal with it. And this is somebody, by the way, I think this story is cool. I gotta, because I'm a little bit of a romantic at heart here, but you meet her by going into a library because you're wanting to read the Baton Rouge the newspaper, right? And so you meet Janice at the library, and she didn't even know you're a football player.
She had no idea. She had no idea. And she learned we played Tennessee State. Actually, the first game, this is the game that propelled me to be a starter.
Yeah.
Because the starting quarterback got his wrist broke. The second team quarterback couldn't move the team. I went in and moved the team, and we ended up winning 21-6. And her and her girlfriend was walking past the locker room, and I came out of the locker room, and she stopped and said, "You play football?" Now, remember, now, supposedly she had been to this game, and she didn't know I played in the game. And then from that day on, that was it. She had no idea I played football.
So the love of your life, and you lose her when your daughter's 3 months old, and then on top of everything else, and a lot of people would go south, in a lot of different ways in response to that, and you didn't.
Yeah, you know what? And I look at people today, and they do a lot of things, whether or not it's alcohol, whether or not it's drugs, and they always say, "Man, I had so much on my mind. I had so much on my mind." I don't know anybody could have had as much on their mind that I had on my mind. But I refused to go down that road. But at the same time, like I said earlier, I was questioning God as to why. But I realized, I had no control over it.
Right.
So you got to find a way to, number one, for me was to make sure that the baby girl was all right.
Right.
That was the number one thing.
Right.
When we went to bury her and stuff like that, I realized now I got to go forward. I can't go backwards.
Right.
Because if I did, I'm going to let the little girl down. I'm going to let everybody who's pulling for me down.
Right.
So I had to find a way to make it work.
Right.
And, thank God my family, my sister Jacqueline, my brothers, everybody pitched in and took care of Ashley. While, when I decided to go play in the USFL, I said, "Y'all got to take care of my baby." They said, "We got her." So they took care of my baby till I came back home and eventually built a house and things like that. And, I'm just blessed.
And life was able to start a new chapter. And so you went to the Oklahoma Outlaws, and you played in the USFL for 2 years, and then the USFL folds.
Yeah, you realize, man, am I doing the right thing? But the good part about it was, if football was no more, I knew I could go back to high school to coach. Because that's what I wanted to do anyway.
Okay.
I wanted to do anyway. I wanted to coach.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go to Grambling with the idea that I was going to be a professional football player. I got lucky. And then the phone rang. One guy called. One team called. Joe Gibbs.
Joe Gibbs again.
Joe Gibbs again. I don't know where he come from, but he's always around.
Yeah.
And he called and he said, "Hey, Douglas." He called me Douglas now, which is another thing because my mom and my oldest brother are the only two people call me Douglas. And usually when they say Douglas, I'm in trouble. So Joe called me Douglas. I said, "Coach." And Coach got a little funny laugh, He said, "I'm calling." He said, "I'm trying to find out, could you come up here to be the backup quarterback?" And I said, "Hey, Coach," I said, "I can be any up you want me to be because I don't have a job."
and the saying goes that Joe Gibbs said the most important player on a football team is the starting quarterback, and the second most important person is the backup quarterback. Right?
And he got that right, because if you got a starter and don't have a backup, if the starter get hurt and you don't have a backup, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And in '86, I threw one pass in 1986.
Right.
And then the '87 season come around.
Well, hang on. I don't want to get past '86 because you almost got in the game, and Jay Schrader was hurt, and Coach sent you in, and you were halfway into the field, and Jay Schrader looks at you and waves you off the field. I mean, looks and just what'd that do to you?
Well, that day, in my football life was probably one of the most embarrassing things that I've been through. To be on my way on the field to get a chance to play, and somebody other than a coach wave you off.
Right, and does it definitely with a look of,
I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So I did a little U-turn and came right back to the sideline, but it had always resonated with me. For some reason or other, it resonated. And so that's how I finished the '86 year. We was playing the Giants, and we got beat like 17-0. It was early third quarter. You never know what could have happened if I had went in there. Who knows? But that's water under the bridge. And then the '87 season came, and the first game of the season, he got hurt against Philadelphia Eagles. So I came in and we beat the Eagles like 34-20, something like that. And he came back and played, and then he got hurt again. I came in against the Detroit Lions. And my man Gary Clark found a way to in the end zone, came back, and we won that game.
Right.
And then, I became a starter. So when I was starting and playing, and then I got hurt, and then I got out, then he came. So I'm on the bench all the way to the last game of the season. We playing the Minnesota Vikings. And we was behind. We had already made the playoff.
Right.
But we was behind in that game. And Coach Gibbs said, Douglas put me in. And we came back. I remember hitting Ricky Sanders across the middle for a TD. Then we ended up kicking a field goal. We won the game. And after that game, the post-game press conference, Coach Gibbs said, Doug Williams is going to be my starting quarterback going into the playoff. I didn't have no idea that he was going to do that. And he did that going into the playoff. And the next week we had to play the Chicago Bears. And it was cold, man. It was 13 below zero. We went in there. And I didn't know what I was going to do. My hands was frozen, pregame warm-up. I'm trying to find out how am I going to play this game. And we fell behind 14-0. Found a way to come back. And
this was the Chicago defense, the Monsters of the Midway, right?
One of the best defense in the league at that time, because really we was not supposed to be in the running for the Super Bowl.
Right.
The 49ers was supposed to win it that year. Minnesota went to San Francisco and beat them.
Upset them, yeah.
And then the next team was the Chicago Bears because of their defense. So we went to Chicago, and Darryl Green, they was up 17-14. Darryl Green took a punt in for a TD, and we ended up winning 21-17.
Yeah.
And the next week, we had to play the Minnesota Vikings again. So within 2 weeks, we got to see the Minnesota Vikings. And, it's hard to beat a team two times in less than 2 weeks.
Right.
And
the knock on you, excuse me, I just got to interject this, but the knock on you on some of the games that you'd played that season that hadn't worked out so well, you lost those games, and they said that Doug Williams is going to choke, and your quote was what? What did you say?
I don't remember what I said. But,
well, I'll tell you. You
said
said if I have to choke all the way to San Diego, if that's what it takes, that's what I'll do.
That sounds like something I'd say. You're right. And we was able to do that against the Minnesota Vikings, because at the end, Darryl Green showed up again. He ran the punt back in Chicago, and last play of the game, he knocked the pass away from Darren Nelson at the goal line. And when that happened, we was on our way to San Diego.
Right.
And we had 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks to prepare, and it was like an unbelievable thing to me. Every night you go to sit in bed, you lay in the bed, and you say, man, we're going to the Super Bowl. Something that you didn't dream of, something that you want to do, but you didn't dream of.
Right.
But you are actually going to play in the Super Bowl.
Right.
And, I didn't think about the fact that we was playing against Denver and John Elway. That wasn't important at that time. The fact was we was playing the Super Bowl.
Right. You're enjoying the moment.
So what the media did, they made it a big thing because I was black. Everybody wanted a story about Doug Williams, the black quarterback, playing in the Super Bowl.
Right.
But nobody gave us a chance anyway. It was Elway. It was Elway game to lose. And everybody wanted to write a story. So we got out that first week. I didn't deal with the press hardly at all. And then we had to fly to San Diego. You got to talk to the press at the Super Bowl. So I said to myself that I was going to only talk to the press when I had to. And that's what I did. I talked to the press and had to. And they all was around the hotel, man. They were like shocked, like a fish, blood in the water. They was around there trying to get a story. And I stayed in my room, stayed away from them, with the playbook and all. I go to practice, go to eat, go straight to the room. And then I had a buddy, Jimmy Giles, who, like I told you, I played with at Tampa. And he said, hey, man, let's go eat. I said, man, I don't want to be bothered with them press. He said, nah, you going to eat. So he came, knocked on my door, walked out of there. He had me by my arm, walked straight through all these reporters. He said, nope, we ain't talking. We ain't talking. Got in the car, went to eat, come back. He brought me back to my room. And that's basically how I did it, Didn't talk to anybody. And, the game. The game is there. But Saturday come around, and I got a toothache. I can't practice. I can't practice Saturday morning. That's game day before practice, day before the game. And I go to La Jolla to do x-rays on my mouth, and they find I need a root canal.
Before the Super Bowl, the day before the Super Bowl.
That Saturday day, while everybody else on the practice field, I'm doing a 4-hour root canal. So when I get back to the hotel, they all was packing their bags to move to a secret hotel. You know, so I had to go, and somebody had to go get my bag and all, bring it to the hotel. I'm sitting there, I'm full of, I had taken some medication to keep the pain down. So I'm driving to this hotel, the Lawrence Welch Resort. You know Lawrence Welch?
Yeah.
And the music, the music.
Yeah.
So you walk in the room, and that's the music that's playing. Remember now, I got
Compounded the root canal.
I got a
huh?
root canal. I'm listening to Lawrence Welch.
Welch.
And I told my roommate, AJ, I said, AJ, you got to turn that down, man. You got to turn that music down. So I get there, and I just lay down, and I go to sleep for a while. So when it was time to go to meetings and stuff like that, I don't go to no meetings, nothing like that. And the next morning, but not the next morning, that night, I always eat a bag of Hershey Kisses. I had a bag of Hershey Kisses in my bag. So I said, how am I going to do this? So I got them out, and I ate a whole bag of Hershey Kisses on the other side. I mean, I melt in your mouth, right? I had them on the other side and got the playbook. Finally went to sleep. Woke up the next morning, John. Believe me, didn't feel no pain.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reach out to Hershey's and tell them that they owe us a sponsorship for
They
this,
do.
For this podcast. For
They
sure,
really do. They really do. But I'm telling you, I felt no pain. I didn't even think about a root canal. Whatever it was was gone.
Wow.
And on the way to the stadium, Concord Stadium, San Diego. So many things going through my mind. That bus ride. Bus ride's about 45 minutes to the stadium, man. You just think about the fact that you get a chance to play in the Super Bowl and where you come from. I thought about all the roads, and I used to always say the road that was less traveled than the roads I had to take to get to the Super Bowl. And when they called me out, starting line up, running up under them balloons, man, and then seeing that fly over for pregame, it was like, man, what is happening here?
Right.
Then the first quarter rolled around. They beat us, man. They was beating us to death. John Elway came out, the first player. His team had the ball. It's 7 points.
A bomb down the
down the point.
Yeah.
And then another time they get the ball, they come down, they threw a pass to John Elway. I said, oh man, John Elway gonna have a great day today. Look like, and we stopped them for a field goal. It's 10-0. Then they kicked off to us. We fumbled the kickoff. It just so happened tight end Terry Orr got in that pile and came out with the football.
Wow.
Because if they had that, they could have been 17-0 before
right.
you know it. And from that time on,
but you had hurt a little bit.
This is what happened. I didn't hurt it then, but we got the ball back.
Okay.
And we moving the ball a bit. Ardmont caught the first down.
Right.
Throw it to Gary Clark. He tried to run with it. He drops the football. And then I go back to pass, and I slip, and boom, hyperextended my knee. So now I'm laying on the turf. I'm trying to figure out how bad is my knee hurt. And the trainer, Kioki, came out, and he attempted to put his hand on my knee, and I said, nope. I said, don't touch me. I said, because if the good Lord let me get up today, I'm going to finish this game. And I told him, don't touch me. And I was able to get up, limp off the field. They had Jay Schrader went in for 2 plays, got sacked both times. And then we punted to Denver. And Coach Gibbs came to me, and he said, Douglas, you all right? I said, yeah, Coach, let's go. And Coach Gibbs said, let's get this sucker to rolling. And I went out there in the first play of the second quarter, 80-yard bomb to Ricky Sanders. And from that, 17 more plays.
The steamroller went.
It was over.
Yeah.
It was over,
yeah. 35 points. Four touchdown passes, right?
4 TD passes in the second quarter.
Right. And what most football historians say is the greatest quarter of football that's ever been played.
That's a cliche that records are made to be broken.
Right.
And I agree with that.
Right.
But when you think about 35 points in only 18 plays, because your average TD drive is actually about 10 to 11 plays for your one TD.
Yeah.
We scored 35 points in 18 plays.
Right.
I would say this. I don't think it would ever be broken again.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though it could be.
Yeah, even with even with the Patriots over the Falcons, everything like that, it still doesn't equal that for sure.
No,
yeah.
it won't be broken again. But so that's what happened, man.
Yeah. And this was against John Elway.
John Elway.
You know, Golden Lock John Elway. You know, that was just everybody just thought it was almost like a given that they would win, and you end up walking off the field as a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, you know, and I understood why they say Elway. Elway, great career.
Yeah.
And Doug Williams. You got Elway, you got Doug Williams. Who you picking? Mm-hmm. You know, they pick Elway. Mm-hmm. But what they didn't realize, from a team standpoint, I had the best team.
Right.
I had the most physical team. Because after that second quarter, it was sheer domination. My offensive line dominated their defense. My defensive line with Dexter Manning, Charles Mann, and David Butts and Darryl Grant dominated their offense.
Yeah.
You know, we kept John away in the pocket. We took away everything they like to do. We picked them off 3 times. So the defense gave us the ball back.
Something to win.
It was up to us to do something with it.
Right.
And we did that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a great story. And of course you went on from there. You came back the next year, and then you know, you played. But how did things wind up there in Washington? What was that like for you?
Well, you know, in '89, I had back surgery, and you know, missed half the season, can't come back. And after that, Coach Gibbs called me in the office, and he said, "I'm gonna go with Ripien." I said, "Okay." He said, "So I'm gonna cut you." You know, that didn't sit well at that particular time. You know,
right.
You're talking about a man's livelihood.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm gonna cut you." He said, I'm gonna sign Jeff Rutledge. And, you know, he said, "You're a little banged up." I said, "Okay, Coach." I said, "Well, let me say this." I said, "A banged up Doug Williams can be the healthy Jeff Rutledge any day
yeah.
playing." And he was honest. And that's why I love Coach Gibbs. He was honest. He said, "Look, there ain't no way I can be standing on that sideline and Rip is playing. And if he's not playing well, you know the crowd gonna be saying, 'We want Doug. We want Doug.'" He said, if you the backup quarterback, that's what they're saying. He said, "I can't stomach that. That ain't gonna happen."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, I respected that." Mm-hmm. You know, and for about 2 years, you know, I was kind of mad with Coach.
Yeah.
We didn't speak, you know, hey. And then I was at the Senior Bowl, and he told one of the coaches, he said, "Go tell Doug to come to my room," you know. So Coach Bro came to me and said, "Hey, Joe want to see you." I said, "For what?" He said, "Just want you to come to this room tonight." I said, "Okay." And I went by this room, and I walked in. He said, "Douglas," with that laugh of his. "Hey, Coach, how you doing?" And so we sat down, we talked, you know. And I told him, I said, "Coach, look, I'm all right." I said, "You gave me an opportunity to play. You gave me an opportunity to win the Super Bowl." I said, I'm more grateful for you than you think." You know, we talked about Tampa Bay. We talked about when he came to visit me at the school, and we talked about his family, you know. And that day, we just squashed everything. Mm-hmm. You know, we both better than that, Coach.
Right.
If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have had the opportunity.
Right.
So that's how it ended up.
So it's another lesson of resilience and of being able just to, you know, move on in life. That forgiveness is a part of that often. To be able to do
There's
that,
no
for
question.
sure.
There's no question.
You know, because you're going to have your hurts, and so you referenced that a quote came to your mind as you were standing on that field in San Diego after winning the Super Bowl. What was the quote? What came to your mind?
The mountaintop.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King.
You know, at that particular time, I said to myself, "I'll reach the mountaintop."
Right.
You know, you hear that so much in his speech, you know. And I said, "I'll reach the mountaintop." At that time, you know, I was walking off, my helmet was high in the air.
Right.
And I said to myself, you know, if I don't play tomorrow, if I don't play any other time, it's fine with me. I'm
right.
at the mountaintop.
Right.
And I walked off and going down to the dressing room, I walked out, going in down the tunnel. Who did I run into? Eddie Roberts. Man.
From Grambling. There you go.
Didn't know he was there. The NFL, the commissioner brought him to the game.
Right.
Man, I hugged Coach Rob, and he hugged me, and we cried. We both cried. We threw so much snots, it wasn't even funny, man. Just the idea that he was there, and he came to the game.
Yeah.
And when I went in the locker room, Joe Gibbs was at the door, and he said, "Hey man," he said, "I told you so."
There we go.
I said, "Yeah, you did, Coach."
Yeah.
And I can't even replay it.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
about it.
you did a pretty
all
good
the time.
job. I feel like I was there with you. But it's kind of representative, really, because that speech came from the night before Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Right.
And he said, I may not get to the mountaintop, but he was basically, casting the vision for those
Right.
who one day would. And you were kind of representative of players who maybe didn't get that. We didn't get there for whatever reason.
But
Maybe
I
didn't
got
have
there.
the opportunity,
Yeah.
but you got there and you're representative of that. But then you were also representative of the players that would be following in your footsteps.
Right.
And now, because of you persevered, now they would have even more opportunities.
Yeah, and that's what I thought about when, in his speech in Memphis, when he said, "I might not get there," it's almost like he had a feeling
Right.
that something was going to happen.
Right.
And when I walked off, I said to myself, "I reached the mountaintop."
Right.
Because that's what Martin Luther King was talking about.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And somebody said, maybe we don't have a black president until we have a black NFL quarterback win the Super Bowl. That maybe there's certain precedents that have to
Right.
come. And so we've been talking about just overcoming adversity, and it resonates with me because I love those types of stories, and I love the inspiration that comes from your story, Doug Williams. But it's really kind of the core of what we do at the Good Feet store, really helping people.
Helping people. That's what it's all about.
Get out there and live life, right?
No,
Don't let your feet get in the way.
Hey, let me say this. Whatever I overcame, getting my good feet has helped me overcome a lot of things too.
There you go.
So that's all part of it.
Yeah.
That's all part of it. You know.
Because part of your success, as you recounted, was not going to self-destructive type of things. So being active,
Right.
being able to continue your passion, that kind of thing. For you, it was playing professional football.
Exactly.
For other people, it may be being able to walk around the block or whatever else. But we all need to be able to have our feet and our body feeling good, and that's what we're about at the Good Feet store, is to helping people do that.
But even in my job right now, I'm on my feet a lot.
Right.
I go down to practice every day, and I'm walking around knowing I got good feet with me. That's a good feeling.
Well, it's a good feeling for us to have Doug Williams on Team Good Feet, and thank you for sharing today. And folks, if you're out there and you want to experience what Doug Williams did, then come to the Good Feet store. Go to goodfeet.com, and you can set an appointment there or find the location nearest you. But it's really something that even young people. I had my grandson in here who wanted to say hello to him. He's 6 years old, just getting started in playing football, and it's important for them to make sure that their feet are taken care of, all the way up to we have customers that come to the store in their 80s and 90s, and so everybody in between.
I got two young girls. I'm definitely going to take them to the Good Feet.
We're going to get them, and like I said, we got to do that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, soon as they come off this vacation, they go into the Good Feet store.
There we go. We'll even extend their vacation. They'll feel like they're on vacation.
They might do that too.
Well, Doug Williams, thank you for sharing time with us.
Thank you.
And it's a blessing to be able to share your life experience. I consider it an honor to be able to for you to open up and to be transparent, maybe to talk about things in life that are painful. We all have them. They may be different dimensions or different types, but it's an inspiration to hear how you've been able to come across, and hopefully for listeners and viewers, they'll feel the same way.
Yeah, the more we think we're apart, the more we're together.
Right.
When you look at it realistically.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks. That's this edition of Footnotes. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you again down the road. This is Jonathan Cotten with the Good Feet Store. Have a great day.